So I have built dozens of apps over the past 4 years, and I wanted to share the recurring pages that I was adding to all my apps. So when I say business apps, it's mostly so either internal tools like a CRM, an ERP, an intranet, things like that, or portals. So a client portal, vendor portal, a deal room for prospects, etc. And there's actually 4 families or types of pages that I always add to my apps, and they probably make like around 90% of your needs for business apps. And I also know that when you get started and start like working on an app, it's not easy to know which pages do you actually need. Do you put everything on the home page? Do you have like all sorts of pages with no coherence? And hopefully this is helpful to have a bit of a framework to think about that. And very simply, first of all, you'll have a homepage. So here I'm really talking about apps where you have users log in. I know that there are some apps where you have some pages that are public. So if it's a directory, things like that. Here, let's really take the example of these apps where you log in. So for example, you log into an internal tool like a CRM, and your experience is very narrow, meaning like in a client portal, the goals are to maybe track different client projects and share a task list with the different clients. Clients see their own projects and tasks. As admins or internal users, you see all clients and things like that. So usually business apps have a very narrow and defined scope. And then for the homepage, so there's one first aspect to that. For your apps, you might have different user groups. So as I mentioned, either clients or internal users, or if it's a school thing like teachers and parents or students and things like that. So before building the app, you'll make sure you know which will be the user groups that will log into the app. And from there, you can decide if you have one homepage that is actually shared for these different user groups, or if each user group will have their own homepage. And I think it's important to consider that. Basically, a rule of thumb here is if less than 50% or 40% of the different blocks that you will show on this page will be different for the different user groups, then I would recommend to separate those home pages and really assign one homepage to each user group. So when you're building those pages, and we'll be seeing how to do that in Softr, which is this app builder, that makes it very easy to build those tools. You could set up the condition for one block, for example, here listing tasks will only be visible to one or the other user group. But if there is not much in common, you separate the experiences, and your clients will have their own homepage and your internal users will have their own homepage. So once you figure that out, what should you have for a homepage for a certain user group? You should have overall the top 3 quick actions that they can take. So it can be 2, it can be 4, but I wouldn't recommend to go beyond that, because again, the scope of this app is defined and is precise. So you probably want to focus on the actions that are the most relevant to access very easily. So for example, if you're building an expense tracker for a company to have the employees submit some requests and then the finance team to approve them. Here we could say, employees, the most recurring thing and quick action they have to do is to actually submit a new request. So probably you'll have that form to submit a new request very easily accessible, either like on the homepage or having a way to get there from the homepage. That's for sure. Then eventually a view of the pending requests would be something to have on the homepage. So if you want to quickly have a look at the status of your expense, like has it been approved or not, you could have that list of requests you made filtered on the ones that are still pending. And for the finance team, Yes, you could list all requests, etc., even the ones from the past, the ones that got denied, etc. But that would be too much noise. When you log in, you probably want to just see like very easily the requests that are pending and that you have to, act on. So here you would see as a finance manager, probably just a list of expenses you have to approve or deny that are pending your action. Yeah, and you can have also like these quick links to, link to the other pages of the app where you can do different things, find more data, etc. Or you can keep that for your navigation bar where you will have the rest of the pages. So we'll get back to that later. So the second type of pages are the utility pages. No, so yeah, we can start with the utility pages. These are actually all the boring stuff basically that just needs to exist, but you shouldn't take too much time working on that, and that's why I really love Softr, because they provide all of those out of the box. It will be, that login, sign up page, the page or the flow to reset your password, the 404 page, which is whenever you reach a URL that doesn't exist, that page that shows that either something is broken or maybe invites you to get back to the home page. Or that's more Software specific, this onboarding flow where you want to force your users to go through a certain flow to either complete their profile or create a record before they can access the app. These are all considered utility pages. Very important, very boring to work on. So, but they need to exist, and they're one of the families of pages. So to get back to the real features of the app, we are now on the category of entity pages. That's one way to call them. You can call them hub pages, listing pages, things like that. But basically, you will have one page per, so I call it object in your database. So probably per table of your database that has a real, meaning in your app. So to illustrate, if we take the example of a CRM, and we'll see a real CRM later, you'll have one page, listing all contacts. And basically, if you log into HubSpot, you have your homepage where you can do a few things, but then you can access, contacts, companies, tasks, deals. These are all dedicated pages to listing records from this database table. So in your database, as you build your app, you'll have, a table for users, and then, if it's a CRM, a table for contacts, for companies, and then you link contacts to companies, etc. And you'll eventually end up having one entity page per object here. So you can access, all tasks or my tasks, whatever the context of the app is. And you basically list records there. So you'll choose the best way of listing them. So if it's tasks, maybe you list them on a Kanban board. If it's companies, maybe in a table. You can actually have two types of formats. So one would be maybe a table view, so it's very dense and easy to find, and one would be a calendar view, so you can switch and depending on how visual you want it to be, etc. From there, you can also have this action to add a record to this database table or to this object. So you can have that add contact action from there, or add a task, etc., which will open a little form. There are different ways to do that. Either it's on its own page that hosts the form, or it's directly just opening a modal in that page to add a record. Now, because you list tasks, projects, documents, etc., usually, so if it's if you don't need to do much about those, but are just storing, for example, documents, and you just have a document name and the file, and it's not related to any other object, etc., you might stop there and just list them on this entity page. And maybe here you can have different, like directly on the list, you will have an option to edit a record or delete one. That could be fine. But usually you offer a way to, click on one of these records and open it to, see it, fully, to see more details about that record. Also, because when you work in a table, you don't have much space to work on one company specifically if it's a CRM. So you probably want to click on that company and have a better view to see what's in that company and interact with it, etc. So I usually keep the action to edit a company, to delete one, etc. for what we call the detail pages right here. And basically, when you click on one of these records, it opens that detail view, and you usually have this. So in Softr, it's called item detail block, where you can like show a lot of the fields in the database for that record. So company name, logo, website URL, description, etc. And usually that's a way to have more than on the entity page, because on the entity page, you might not want to list all the properties of that record, whereas here, detail page, you show everything relevant. And that's where you can have these actions. So I don't know, change status for a task, assign to someone, delete it, edit the information, all of that. It would be actions that are related to this item detail. And it will all get more concrete when we get to see real apps. And what I really like to do to really go beyond just showing the details of that record is to also, below that, list related objects. So if you open a company, you actually might want to list related contacts or contacts that work at this company right below. You might want to list related tasks or deals or things like that. Same for projects. You'll open a project and you'll see the related tasks. But if you open a task, you'll see below the related projects, and you could then open, if you want to, from a task, open the related project to see more information about that project, you could go, from detail page to detail page. And that's something that works very well, especially if you decide to, and that's again, maybe a bit specific to Softr, but you can achieve that on other apps. If you open these detail pages in a modal, so either centered modal or sliding modal on the side, where basically you don't really change page when you display this detail page. So you're on the list of companies and you click on one company, it will open just on the side of the screen the detail about that company. So you're not really leaving the page, changing URL, it would be slow, etc. And it really gives a nice experience. And overall, that's about it. The other types of pages that are more like a more specific would be one page that would just be a sort of dashboard or like analytics with charts, or one could be forms. So that's one way. If you have multiple places where you list like companies for your CRM, and you don't want to configure the action to add a new company, to create a record for a company on many different like pages or blocks, etc. Because then if you want to add a new field to all these forms, you would have to change it in many different places and might forget, etc. Then in that case, I would recommend to create one page that has just a form to create a new company. And then from the different places where you want to allow to create a company, you would just make sure that when you click on that button, it opens that page that contains the form maybe in a modal, so you don't change page. That way you have only one form to maintain. So that would be it for the types of pages. So now let's open one of my apps in Softr. This is a CRM example, a version of one of the templates I've released for Softr. And we are here, if I look at the pages, we are here on our, we call it dashboard here. It's actually the homepage for this time for all types of users. So if I go in here, user groups, we have admins and sales reps. but actually they share quite a lot in common. So we have this welcome block. We here decide to, and here is our navigation bar, but we also link here to some of the entity pages. And here it's, we have 4 tabs here. We could put the dashboard, the dashboards in a dedicated page. Right here we have them. It's a bit more dense than what I mentioned, but yeah. As a sales rep, you would see my tasks, a Kanban of your tasks. So it's really something when you log in, you want to know, where you're at with your tasks, and that's why I think it's definitely useful to have it on the homepage. All tasks. So here, what's interesting is that the My Tasks here is only available for sales reps because admins don't have any tasks related to these contacts, etc., assigned to them, and all tasks is actually for admins. My dashboard as well, same. It's for sales reps. So in the end, when you log in and preview the app as so what do we have as a sales rep, you actually have only those. So I can act on my own tasks. And how do I know that we are only seeing my tasks? It's because here we have a conditional filter that says, hey, show me in my database CRM the tasks that are actually assigned to me as a user. And if we check the data, we have here, for example, here the tasks, and we see that they're always assigned to a user, which is another table of our CRM. Contacts, companies, deals, etc. So in the end, here we have different objects, different tables in our database, and almost each of these objects can become can have an entity page to list them all. And we actually have it for contacts, companies, deals. Interactions, we don't show, we could, but we don't show here a list of all interactions because they're actually mostly relevant when they're related to something we're opening, they're mostly assigned to contacts. So it would be more when we open one contact, we would see the list of interactions. But we don't offer in the CRM, at least for now, just a list of all interactions across all contacts for all companies. Maybe let's get back to the preview. So from here, you either use that or that to open one of the entity pages, and I'll go in here. In here, we list contacts. That's the entity page for contacts, and we can manage those contacts or at least access them. So here I mentioned that we could offer different visualizations. So here I think these are 2 tables, but that's just an easy. We could use here the filter to select by contact owner, etc. But at least as a sales reps, I have the list of my contacts, and it's very easy to manage. But that's also the place where I can access them all. And from here, I can create a contact. And what I could also do is to offer, if I just go in there, I could also enable here the action, so create contact, to export as a CSV, right? So because we are listing all contacts, we might as well, offer to download them. Here I've added another feature, import CSV. So if you have a batch to upload to your CRM, that would be another feature. So it's all related to managing contacts. Now, if I open one, now we have right here a detail page that opens in this side modal. So it doesn't really disturb, the experience. And I can, this is a new feature in Softr. I can resize them. But basically I have here, so this is as a block. If I go in the contact details here, we designed it with here an item details block with pulling data from contacts based on the one we clicked on basically. And then we show some information, so company, email, phone number, etc. We have these different sections because this is more metadata, whereas this is really information about the contact. And we offer these actions to edit it, delete it, etc. And for example, we could say, okay, here only admins can delete a contact. Just reload that. Okay, so we have the record detail block right here, and below I have also added here the related company, because you might want to know more about the company, so you have more information here. But you also have a button right there to open the full detail of the company. So again, we are on the detail page, this time for like a company. And that's why here we can show all contacts, all deals related to this company. If I hit return, we go back to the contact. So yeah, maybe here to just show the related company, we just use a filter here. Company name is, I think I need to remap that. Here, current record company. Yeah, that would work. And it's the same here. We show all past interactions, and we simply filter to make sure that the contact was the contact, and we have more features. From there, yeah, it's the same for all the other. So right here, we show companies. We show only one view here using this grid kind of view, and yeah, it allows to do the same. Deals, same, also an entity page, where yeah, for deals we have the pipeline. We could add a table view as well. So yeah, let's just take a look at how this would work. Sorry. Yeah, here I could add a tab with a table. Could call it like that. We can find I'm sure there is an icon for that. Pipeline table, and here we would basically search for a table. I'm using a native block from Softr. No need for AI to create a reliable table. We're talking about business apps here, and I'm just showing deals, and then I can adjust what information we show, deal name, deal owner, like this, and yeah, whatever information we want. So maybe the deal stage, etc., as well as offer. So we already have deal owner, etc. We already have some filters here predefined, so that's perfect. So if I now just refresh the preview, we have that. Perfect. Now just quickly allowing to, when we hover one of these records, we want to allow to open a page, and here we can select the deals details, because on that page we have an item detail for the deals table. That's how it works. When it comes to, so we saw here 3 types of pages, and the last one is in here, utility pages, and that's all this kind of pages. So we have the login that we can simply configure the way we want, different stylings, and for example here, removing the site section, keep it very simple, customize the messages, etc. The sign up, we actually disabled it. This is right here. It's disabled because this is an internal tool, and I don't want anyone to log into my CRM, so that's why it's disabled. And I get, or my admins get to invite maybe new team members to the team. Account settings, that's also built in Softr, and I could. So here we have password, etc., and we could. Maybe allow them to edit some other things like this. Forgot password, reset password, like all these things are definitely necessary for your apps. They're just built out of the box here, so we don't have to really work on them. And yeah, that's the these are all the building blocks to build such apps, right? And you see that you can configure and personalize them a lot. Here we want to have a very nice form because creating a new deal is, you need to really focus on that. So that's why, here we could remove the add record thing because it's actually happening here. Whereas for, we saw that for contacts, for example, we allow to have it just right here as a form. You get to decide. Here we had this custom feature, etc. And so if we didn't have that on the homepage, let's just remove it. We would anyways be able to navigate thanks to that. So that's our nav bar, and it's one nav bar per page. And basically you would allow to navigate to your entity pages mainly. Now, if we take a quick look at another app I was having here, an ERP app, just to show that it's basically the same principles. We have a little welcome block here, quick links to the different, here we organize really almost by departments. So inventory, we have a list of products. Sales, we have probably a database of like orders. For the finance stuff, we have expenses, etc. And we decided, and that's just one example, to show here not a list of all the products, but a list of products where the number of items in stock is below 100. And that's something we want to flag here. Hey, these products need attention because we don't have much left. So if I go in, for example, sales, this was an app where I went a bit, I did it a little bit differently, where actually, because it's an ERP and we have a lot of things into one, I did here consolidate two types of entity pages into one. So we have all orders and all customers, and right here we have a couple, dashboards. So this, this framework is a starting point, and from there you can customize. But if it makes sense to regroup by kinds of departments and things like that, and then have user groups that can only access certain pages. For example, this finance page wouldn't be accessible. I don't know if it's the case here. Let me see what user groups we have. You could definitely build these kind of permission systems, etc. So we have also the same principle. If we click on one order, we would see the order detail and below the related customer that placed this order. So if I quickly check the preview as an employee, or let's say as a manager, I'm not sure what are the differences. If I go in here, inventory management, I have my list of products, and when I open one, I can see what orders are related to this product, and I don't know which one has any order. But if I go in sales, some dashboards, and I see my different orders, then my customers, some dashboards. So again, entity page here, also detail pages. In that case, you could actually, like, if it's just to show some information, you could decide to have it all in one table. So you would have as an option the option to edit the record or delete it. So you don't even need to design a detail page. So we could see, I think that with 4 types of pages, one of them you don't even have to build it yourself if you're using a platform like Softr. But overall, just think about, so once you've scoped, what your app should enable to do, who are the different types of users that will log in. You can then work on your database and structure it in a way where you really have one table per real object of your database. So each row can be quite unique. So products or customers or companies or tasks or documents. Have the right fields for each of these objects. So you want to have the task description, the task due date, the task owner, etc. Once you have your database ready, and I mean, you can get the help of AI to do that. Like we could simply be prompting in here, you know, what we want as a database, or when we get started with Softr, you can just say, hey, I want a CRM that does this and that. It would build a first version of your database for you. So from there, and yeah, by the way, these principles are the ones that the AI Code Builder is using here. But I think it's definitely important to understand them, to then be able to tweak them the way you want and to adapt them to how you want your apps to look. But overall, you're pretty safe if you follow this kind of framework to organize your apps. So you make sure that for your users, it's very easy to find what they need. And of course, once you launch, you should also get feedback from the users. If you're a user yourself or like building for a team, definitely, you know, make sure you know what are the top actions they need to access very quickly, so you can make sure they're easy to access from the homepage or from a direct link, etc. And yeah, that should work. All right. Hope this was useful. Bye.